So here's what's happening, guys. India just made a big decision that's making waves around the whole world. It's no longer about picking the east side or the west side. India is making its own path that doesn't belong to anyone else but India. The world sees India making friends not because it's scared, but because it's smart with Russia, with China, with countries nearby and other partners. India is making a new balance, a new way of doing things. And while this happens, America is stuck at a tough spot. Will America get used to this big change, or will it stick to old ways and watch its power fall apart? America has lost India. And this truth is being heard louder across the world than many people want to admit. For many years, Washington thought that New Delhi would always stay within its group of friends, that India's growth would happen under the protection of American help and guidance. But what has happened is not just a change, but a big reveal that India doesn't want to be seen as a little partner or a country waiting for approval from the West. Instead, it has accepted its own identity as a strong power, and by doing this, it has quietly but strongly moved away from America's control. This is not about being mean. It's about growing up. It's about a country seeing its strength and refusing to let another country tell it what to do. For years, America used its plan of partnerships and friendships to reach far places. India, with its huge number of people, growing money-making and military strength, was seen as an important piece on the world game board, but India has made it clear that it will not be turned into a small piece in someone else's game by making different friendships, strengthening ties with Russia, working with China, even though they disagree, and making independent money and defense rules. India has stepped out of the shadow America once put over India's growth as a world leader. This is not just a political decision, but a message to the whole world that India belongs to no team but its own. The loss of India for America is more than just symbolic. It means the wearing away of a plan that put the United States at the center of world decision-making. It means that Washington's ability to shape stories and control outcomes has gotten weaker in the places of power. This understanding is scary because it shows that the time of one-sided control is slipping away. The very idea that India could turn its back on America's hopes shows a bigger trend. Nations once pushed into following orders are now changing the rules of working together. India's refusal to give up its independence has turned into a lesson for others who want to break free from depending on others. This loss also changes how people see America itself. For many years, the United States showed itself as the best partner for growth, safety, and world standing. But India has shown that real growth comes from inside. Real safety comes from depending on yourself. And real standing comes from refusing to bend. America's failure to hold on to India shows a weakness that goes beyond dealing with other countries. It shows the losing grip of a power that once believed no country could fight its influence. The new reality cannot be denied. India is making a path where America is no longer the guide. And in that path lies the story of a changing world order. Being independent over being controlled is the message India has chosen to tell the world. And it is this message that carries the weight of history and the hope of the future. For way too long, powerful countries tried to tie others with strings of depending on them, giving help with rules, partnerships with hidden demands, and friendships that helped the stronger side more than the weaker. India has lived through hundreds of years of foreign control, being used and being tricked, and it has learned that the price of being controlled is always bigger than the promise it seems to bring. To give in to another power's wishes is to give up identity, to lose voice, and to trade dignity for short-term gain. India, rising in confidence and strength, has decided that it will never again walk that path. It has chosen independence, and in that choice lies the heart of real freedom. This decision is not just political, it is deeply spiritual, cultural, and historical. Independence is not just the ability to make laws or run armies, it is the right to decide one's future without others getting in the way. Being controlled, on the other hand, is sneaky. It is dressed as partnership, wrapped in words like working together or shared interests, but why America lost its grip on India underneath it hides the unequal power, the hope for obedience, and the demand to give in. India's refusal to bow its insistence on making decisions that help its own people first is a direct rejection of that hidden control by walking away from dictated terms, by refusing to give up its stance in world matters, and by daring to challenge the control of bigger powers. India has shown that independence is not something you can trade away. The choice of independence over being controlled also sends a message to its citizens. It tells every Indian that their voice matters, that their country stands tall, and that their future will not be sold in the dealing rooms of foreign capitals. It is a promise of trust in their potential, in their ability to rise without leaning on the help offered by those who would like to keep them depending on others. This choice makes national pride stronger, brings the people together in a common belief, and creates a foundation that cannot be shaken by outside pressure. On the world stage, India's stance inspires others, smaller countries, often caught in the tug of war between powerful groups, see that it is possible to say no, to fight back, to make their own paths. Independence becomes catching. It spreads as an idea, as a possibility, as a reality that others dare to imagine. And when more countries begin to follow that path, the whole balance of world power changes. Being controlled, once seen as the only choice for staying alive, is replaced by the courage of independence. In choosing independence over being controlled, India has accepted the responsibility of depending on itself. This path is not easy. It needs giving up things, being tough, and having vision. But it is the only path that makes sure you get respect and real power. Countries that bend stay forever under the shadow of others. But those that stand unshaken even when the winds of pressure blow strongest write their own future. India has shown that dignity is bigger than depending on others, and freedom is more than any favor. A statement of independence is not simply a paper signed on a certain date or an event written in the history books. It is a living act, a statement made by a country that refuses to be chained, a voice that rises above all pressures to claim its rightful place in the world. When India states its decisions boldly, when it refuses to bend to the wishes of outside powers, when it chooses its own path, no matter who gets upset, that is nothing less than a modern statement of independence. It is not a copy of what happened hundreds of years ago in other lands. It is India's own, born out of its struggles, its sacrifices, and its vision for the future. This statement does not come from words written on paper, but from actions that prove to the world the cost of arrogance in diplomacy, that India belongs to itself and no one else for many years. World powers believed they could shape India's rules, control its money choices, and influence its friendships. They assumed India would always stay within their circle, too dependent to step away, too careful to fight back. But that assumption has been broken. Each bold decision, whether in defense, trade, or dealing with other countries, has become a line written in this living statement. Every time India says no to getting in the way, every time it chooses to side with its own people rather than outside demands, it is signing and sealing this independence with actions louder than any announcement. This statement is also a reflection of the journey India has gone through. From hundreds of years of colonial rule to many years of rebuilding to years of being pressured by competing superpowers, India has carried the weight of others' hopes. But the moment has come when it no longer bows to those burdens. Instead, it stands tall, reminding the world that independence is not given by others, but claimed by those who dare to be free. India is not asking for permission. It is not negotiating for recognition. It is declaring through its behavior and courage that it will not be anyone's second choice or quiet partner. It will lead itself, and in doing so, influence the world around it. A statement of independence is also about identity. It is about telling the world who you are and who you will not be. India has said it will not be a puppet. It will not be a small piece in someone else's plan. It will not be a voice that repeats foreign instructions. Instead, it will be a leader that speaks for its people, a power that acts for its own good, and a country that decides its future. This statement reaches beyond borders, telling other countries that they too can rise. They too can reject control. They too can declare their own independence in whatever form their struggle demands. India's actions are not just policy changes. They are symbolic and powerful statements of freedom. They prove that independence is not a single moment of freedom from the past, but an ongoing choice to fight control in the present. It is a constant reminder that real freedom lies not in what is written, but in what is lived. And India is living that statement. Every single day, a world power change is happening right in front of our eyes. And it is changing the very structure of international relations. For many years, the world was controlled by one main voice, one power that decided the terms of friendships, trade, and even ideas. The United States stood at the center of this order, shaping the sovereignty versus subservience rules and expecting others to follow. But today, that order is falling apart. And the rise of countries like India is at the heart of this change. What was once a world with one main power has begun to change into a reality with many powers where no single power holds total control, and where countries are free to shape their own futures without bending to one controlling force. This is the heart of the world power change, and it carries meanings that will shape the century ahead. India's rise is not a single story, but part of a bigger pattern, where growing powers demand recognition on their own terms for years. World influence was measured by how close you were to the West, but now influence is measured by independence, being tough and depending on yourself. India, by building strong ties with multiple countries instead of tying itself to one team, has put itself as a center point in this new order. Its relationships with Russia, its smart balancing with China, its reaching out to the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia all show that the world is no longer split neatly into East versus West. Instead, it is connected, complex, and layered with India at the center as a country that cannot be ignored. This change also signals a change in the meaning of power itself. It is no longer just about military control or money superiority. It is about influence, believability, and the ability to inspire others to follow. India's stance on independence, its refusal to bow to outside pressures, and its focus on dignity over depending on others have given it a moral authority that many superpowers struggle to claim. Countries around the world see in India an example of how to rise without giving up, how to grow without losing identity, and how to challenge the old order without being eaten up by it. This has created an environment where new friendships are born not from fear, but from shared values and mutual respect for America. This world power change is a challenge unlike any it has faced before. Losing its grip on India means losing a bridge to Asia, losing believability as a partner, and losing the ability to control outcomes with the same confidence it once had for many years. A world-shifting balance of power. The United States relied on the assumption that its control was unquestioned. Now, with India standing firm and other countries following suit, America finds itself forced to reconsider its role, to adapt or risk being alone. The world power change is not a sudden revolution, but a steady rebalancing. It is the rise of many voices where once there was only one. It is the rewriting of the rules by those who were once expected only to obey them. And in this change, India's presence is not just influential. It is central, proving that the age of unquestioned control is over and the time of shared power has begun. The America at a crossroads is the reality of our present world, a moment where choices made will determine not just the future of one country, but the direction of world politics for many years to come. For much of modern history, the United States has enjoyed unmatched influence, controlling terms of trade, shaping friendships, and presenting itself as the world's leader. But today, the foundations of that control are being shaken. India's refusal to fall in line, the rise of China as a money competitor, Russia's defiance, and the appearance of smaller countries asserting their independence have left America standing at a point of decision. The old ways of forcing authority and expecting compliance no longer work. To hold on to them would mean further being alone, but to adapt would require humility, vision, and a willingness to share power in a world that no longer bows to a single master. At this crossroads, America faces two paths. One path is the path of denial, refusing to acknowledge the world power change, continuing to rely on threats, punishments, and control to maintain influence. This path may offer the illusion of strength, but it carries the risk of pushing friends away and creating new coalitions that operate outside American influence. The other path is one of reinvention, accepting the reality with many powers, treating countries as equals rather than subordinates, and recognizing that real leadership now comes from respect, partnership, and cooperation. Choosing this path will not be easy, for it needs letting go of the arrogance of being the only superpower and accepting the idea that India's declaration of independence power must now be shared. America's crossroads is also about identity. Is it a country that will adapt to a changing world with wisdom? Or will it hold on to an outdated image of itself as the unchallenged ruler of the world order? The decisions made in this moment will define not just its foreign policy, but how it is seen by billions around the world. The loss of India as a reliable follower is symbolic of this challenge. If Washington cannot accept that New Delhi is an independent force with its own vision, then it risks pushing away one of the most important partners of the 21st century. If it cannot adjust to India's rise, it may soon find itself struggling to maintain influence elsewhere too. This moment is also a test of toughness. Every empire or superpower in history has faced such turning points, moments when they had to choose between adapting and declining. Those that failed to adjust to new realities faded into being unimportant, while those that redefined themselves endured. America now stands in that same position, with history watching closely. Its military might is unmatched, its economy is still powerful, its culture still influential, but none of that guarantees control if its mindset does not change. The crossroads is not about what America possesses, but how it chooses to use it in a world where others are no longer willing to be quiet followers. The path forward will demand more than power. It will demand wisdom. Will America learn to walk beside others instead of ahead of them, to respect independence instead of demanding loyalty, to listen instead of commanding? At this crossroads, the answers to those questions will decide whether it remains a respected leader in a new world or a lonely giant watching the future move on without it. The cost of arrogance is always higher than it first appears, and history has shown time and again that empires do not collapse only because of outside enemies, but because of the pride that blinds them from within. For many years, America carried itself with the belief that its control was untouchable, nations would always align with its interests, and that no one would dare to walk away. That belief is the very arrogance now haunting it. By assuming that influence was permanent and loyalty guaranteed, America ignored the rising voices of independence around the world. It failed to see that countries like India, once expected to follow without question, were quietly building their own strength and preparing to step out of its shadow. The price of that arrogance is now being paid in the form of lost partnerships, declining influence, credibility that is no global power shift explained, longer unquestioned. Arrogance leads to being too comfortable. America believed its military power, its financial system, and its world reach would always keep others dependent. But power without humility becomes fragile, for it creates anger instead of respect. When America forced its will on others through punishments, conditions, or pressure, it may have gained short-term compliance but lost long-term trust. India's refusal to bend is not an isolated event. It is the echo of years of policies that treated sovereign countries as pawns in a bigger game. The cost of arrogance is that those very pawns have turned into players reshaping the game entirely. The arrogance of believing in eternal control also blinds a country to the changing tide of time. America failed to recognize that the world was no longer willing to accept one master. The reality with many powers had already arrived. While it focused on preserving its superiority, others were quietly making new friendships, building new economies, and creating alternatives to systems once controlled by Washington. India's partnerships with Russia, its working with Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, and its determination to craft independent policies all reveal a truth. America refused to acknowledge that no country wants to live under someone else's shadow forever. The cost of final call to action and motivation arrogance is being alone. When countries feel disrespected, when they are constantly told what to do, they eventually walk away. America, in believing it could control terms endlessly, is now discovering that respect cannot be forced. It must be earned. India's defiance is a reminder that dignity matters more than deals. Independence matters more than aid. Independence matters more than promises of partnership that come with hidden strings. Arrogance underestimated this truth, and now the price is being paid in lost trust and shifting loyalties. The greatest cost of arrogance, however, is missed opportunity. Had America chosen humility, had it treated India and others as equals instead of subordinates, the partnership could have been stronger, the friendship unbreakable, and the influence enduring. Instead, arrogance created distance, mistrust, and resistance. The world has moved forward, and while America still holds immense power, its failure to respect the independence of others has left it weakened. The cost of arrogance is not just in what has been lost, but in what could have been gained if pride had not clouded vision.